All right. Thank you for everyone here joining us for the CUCSA year-end workgroup presentations. Next up, we have the Staff Policy Covered Staff Identity Workgroup, and I'm pleased to introduce Kaeleigh Hayakawa, Workgroup Chair.
Thank you, John. My name is Kaeleigh Hayakawa again, and I am a delegate for UC Irvine and also chair of the Policy Covered Staff Identities Workgroup. With me, I have my incredible colleagues, Patrick Allen from UC Berkeley, Stefan Toma from UC Davis Health, Melissa Romanus from Berkeley Lab, and Lucine Torosian from UC Los Angeles. Erica Leone from UC Riverside unfortunately couldn't be with us, but her invaluable contributions to the workgroup made today's presentation possible. In order to do effective work, CUCSA needs to understand who their constituency is. With non-represented staff numbering over 54,000 system-wide, including Berkeley Lab, it's a challenge to effectively collect and share staff demographics, experiences, and contributions with stakeholders and collaborators. Our work group was broadly charged with creating a view of who this group of staff is to aid CUCSA in pursuit of its mission, as well as providing some relevant recommendations. As part of this, we reviewed publicly available data, collected data of our own through a questionnaire, explored staff recognition practices and programs, and hosted a listening session which expanded on the themes emerging from the questionnaire. Today, we'll be focusing on an overview of our results and recommendations coming out of our research, some of which are for CUCSA and others for leaders across the system. We do recommend reviewing our full report for the full scope of our work and recommendations.
Thank you, Kaeleigh. As Kaeleigh mentioned, we did do a questionnaire, and so I'm going to share a snapshot of some of that data with you today. This work group developed and distributed a brief questionnaire which collected 454 total responses from 13 locations from January 2024 to March 2024. Of those, 402 actually were non-represented staff. And the top three winners of Forgiving Prizes actually were Davis, Merced, and Riverside. When looking at race and ethnicity, the majority of the respondents identified themselves as white, which is around 45%, and I'm rounding up the numbers on this, with about 33% of those who are identifying themselves with some type of racial, ethnic, or multiracial identity as well. Around 8% of the individuals actually responded as being European, and there was about 14% indicated as preferred not to say, which we think is kind of interesting because these individuals we felt didn't feel safe to identify their race or ethnicity within our questionnaire. In terms of gender identity, 72% of the individuals identified themselves as a woman, 18% identified themselves as a man, 1.5% identified themselves as non-binary, and 0.3%, which is a little purple sliver up there, you can see specified as other, with about 8% actually also identified themselves as preferred not to state. There again, we were kind of thinking that's kind of interesting because they didn't feel safe about expressing their true, genuine self. In terms of income and salary, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you will see here the majority of the individuals who actually, from our survey or questionnaire, actually indicated that they were the primary source of income in their household. If you look at the lower right corner, you'll see that 58%, if you kind of combine actually, 58% of the respondents actually marked themselves as making less than $100,000, which is interesting when you're kind of looking at it, thinking that 70% of the individuals are actually the primary source of income in their household. In terms of work modality, approximately 10% of the individuals actually work full on-site with some type of flexible work agreement. 9% of the individuals actually work fully on-site with with no flexible work agreement, sorry about that. 9% work fully on-site with a flexible work agreement, and 16% actually work fully remote in the process. But majority, as you see here, actually 65% actually have some type of hybrid arrangement where it's either 2 or fewer days or 3 or more days on-site. In terms of years of service, with our questionnaire, we see here a range from those individuals, not 0, but less than a year of service to up to 40 years of service. And not to draw any assumptions on this, but it's interesting to note that at the 10 and 15 and 20 year, there is a decline, as you see, in terms of years of service markers. And of course, this could be represented an observation, looking to investigate a little bit further about why, for the CUCSA, looking at why people stay or, why they actually leave the university. So that was something that we wanted to take a look at, or eventually take more look at in the future. And in terms of UC alumni, this was interesting because I know on our campus it seems like everybody is a UC alum, and I also hear in the CUCSA delegation as well. But actually from this, we noted that majority of the respondents were not UC alumni. But there again, this could be the fact that we didn't have a large distribution, or we need a larger distribution of our survey or questionnaire in the future.
Thank you, Patrick. As Kaeleigh mentioned, I'm Melissa Romanus from Berkeley Lab. So we asked respondents to select the top 3 areas they would like to see improvement related to policy-covered staff, well-being, and engagement out of a list of areas. And those areas spanned salary and compensation, overwork, flexible work arrangement, career advancement opportunities, benefits, opportunities for staff input on workplace changes, sense of belonging and community, childcare and other support for working parents, protection from workplace bullying, harassment, discrimination, and staff recognition. Overwhelmingly across all campuses, over 78% of the response included salary and compensation in those top 3 areas. The next highest representation was overwork, garnering almost 42% of the response selection. The third highest was career advancement at 36%, but it's important to note that flexible work was not far behind at 35%. This trend actually followed for the top 3 for all campuses, except UC Merced and UC Berkeley, where notably benefits was in their top 3. So based on this work, there's some recommendations that we have related to developing a picture of staff identities through the use of both qualitative and quantitative data. One would be keep doing it. We think it is valuable for CUCSA to provide the space for staff to answer questions about their experience as UC employees. And these efforts are for staff, by staff, and they offer a level of safety and opportunity to hear perspectives that may not be brought forward through other avenues. And then next, we also think we should continue the efforts to collect and maintain the data from previous years' work groups, especially when the workgroup charges continue or they evolve, but they build upon previous years. And that's so that we can hit the ground running on at least some preliminary data analysis when we start a new workgroup. That might mean we see new perspectives in the data that the previous year's workgroup didn't see, or it also might help inform what we'd like to ask to better have insight at the end of the next year's workgroup charge. Similarly to having a more centralized approach to maintaining that data somewhere, we recommend also somewhere to store our data analysis scripts and maybe methodologies that we used in terms of aggregating and reporting out the data. And then lastly, we think that it's second to lastly, we think it's important to emphasize the intersectional demographic information as part of the employee identity. So for example, the publicly available UC staff workforce profile website, it does list information about policy covered staff along certain demographic axes, but it offers little opportunity to explore multiple demographic axes at once. So for example, there's a breakdown of personnel program by either race and ethnicity, or personnel program by gender identity, but you can't see, for example, how many senior managers identify as female and Native Hawaiian. So we think that's very important. And lastly, in maintaining data, there's always an importance of solidifying a data anonymization procedure and a protection stance for data collected by CUCSA workgroups. And we think that that should continue, and it's vitally important to offering that space for staff to respond to these types of surveys.
Thank you, Melissa. While demographic insights tell part of the story, we felt that the motivators of non-represented staff helps us gain a better sense and understanding of who these non-represented staff are as individuals and in relation to their employment with UC. In the questionnaire, we asked staff what drew them to UC and what compels them to remain employed with UC. 368 respondents shared their thoughts, with 31% of responses noting benefits, including the pension, 16% noting the ability to work with students, 14% noting the mission of the university, and 7% noting the location of their workplace. Beyond this, staff listed being alumni who wanted to come back and serve their alma mater, believing in the power of education and research on our communities, the relationships they have with their colleagues, and their deep connection to the work they do. As one staff member shared, to look around at the world today and to know you're serving a public university that serves the people of California and the world, it's really satisfying. Staff echoed these sentiments during the listening session, expressing a love for the work they do and their colleagues. They reflected and commented on our UC benefits as still being good, although not as competitive as they used to be. And some mentioned that their reliance on UC healthcare kept them at UC for better or worse.
Thank you, Lucine. So another element that we explored was the sense of connection that respondents felt to their department, location, and or UC more broadly. Respondents self-rated on a Likert scale from 1, not feeling at all connected, to 7, very large sense of connection. The average across 401 respondents was 4.965, which alone demonstrates a decent sense of connection among the folks who responded, with some room for improvement. However, comments that we solicited from the questionnaire and listening session give greater meaning to what this number actually does mean. Most respondents cited having the most sense of connection to their direct team, and that they didn't feel a similar sense of connection to their greater location or to UC. In line with this, we recommend that locations implement more accessible opportunities for community building among staff across their location. Respondents share that there was a distinct lack of opportunities, particularly opportunities that were staff focused versus staff inclusive, to meet and build community with those outside of their departments. This was doubly so for respondents who were working hybrid or remote, who wanted connection but had very few outlets for it. With multiple respondents mentioning that their colleagues were a reason that they stay at UC, enabling staff to build their sense of connection and belonging is also connected to staff retention. Another theme from the questionnaire and listening session around connection was related to communication, particularly with leadership. Staff expressed not feeling heard, and when opportunities for communication did occur, not having the same sense that there was always transparency and authenticity in that communication. Communication between non-represented staff and their leaders that they rely upon is what enables us to build a more dynamic understanding of who staff are, which is critical for those who are making decisions and advocating for and against policies that directly impact them. As such, we have 2 recommendations relating to this, with the goal of activating more meaningful opportunities for non-represented staff, particularly those who don't already have direct lines to leaders, like those in staff assembly or CUCSA do. First, the reestablishment and creation of avenues for meaningful two-way communication between staff and local and system-wide leaders. Staff during the listening session called out virtual town halls at their location, as an example, as being too prepared and inauthentic, while not actually allowing for meaningful conversation between staff and leaders to occur. This was in contrast to practices that existed at their location around town halls and similar programs that had existed before the pandemic. And then the second one for CUCSA is for CUCSA leadership to create opportunities for listening sessions at the locations with staff who aren't affiliated with staff assembly. The listening session that we hosted was incredibly insightful, and the impact of staff feeling heard by those working with and for them was tangible, and we believe that great community building and collaboration will be possible through this.
Thank you, Kaeleigh. Good morning, everyone. Stefan, Toma, UC Davis Health, 22 years of service, he and his pronouns. Continuing actually on this, and as part of our research into the non-represented staff, the group conducted a questionnaire to better understand the staff experience of this group, highlighting the biggest successes. And the key findings reflected here on the slide show that almost a third of the respondents mentioned that supporting students was the most significant success story in this journey. Very pleasant to see that happening. Also, ties with the academic mission and the financial and resource management topics came on top, and building community and engagement surfaced as a success story as well. Here is a sample of a roster of various recognition programs that are in place at different locations. Data collected was from individual HR websites, staff assembly websites. We had conversations with CUCSA delegates at various locations. Just wanted to point out that this is not an exhaustive list. It's just a reflection of the main efforts around the recognition we have throughout the UC system. But many more particular efforts per each location might exist and are conducted currently. So based on the success stories presented, the recommendations that surfaced that we have as a group was first to create a budget for staff recognition outside of the annual STAR Awards. That would allow for potential to standardize the recognition programs around milestones, peer recognition topics, and so forth. Also, the request for a senior leadership to be as an annual sponsor for the staff recognition efforts, basically to get a buy-in from executive leadership that would get the word out to the importance of this. And also build recognition programs based on the success stories that we just presented that was surfaced in this survey, meaning supporting students, financial management, contributions to the mission, and most importantly, in my opinion, building community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you everyone very much for your attention, collaboration, and the work that you do every day for our staff and our communities. For more information, be sure to see the full workgroup report that is linked in the video description. We would love to discuss our recommendations with you at the CUCSA Town Hall on Tuesday, June 9th at 11 a.m. Full details are available on our website at cucsa.ucla.edu. Thank you.